Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. And today I have with me somebody who I'm really already feeling like, oh, we're going to have a great conversation. Gail Behrend, right? Yes, thank you. She and I met recently, and she is another one who is very sensitive and had a very interesting journey of stepping into that awareness of energy sensitivities. And I've been wanting to have a conversation like this for a long time. So I want to start off with, what was that journey to having that awareness like first?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me.
You're
I'm
welcome.
excited to take part in this conversation. So I started out very woo-phobic. So I started out as a left-brained logical engineer and was that way until my 30s when something happened that changed my mind. And I was agnostic, and so everything was material. The only reality was material reality. But when I later went on my own personal healing journey, I realized I had been really sensitive as a child, but there was no support for that. And,
Mm-hmm.
you pick up things, you'd ask, like any child will ask a parent for confirmation, and if it's something they don't want you to know, they'll deny it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're innocently asking, and
Right.
and they don't want, so they'll tell you you're making that up, or nah, no, that's not true. And so you don't have any confirmation or
Right.
validation of it. And I was also picking up a lot of emotional energy as a child, and it was just too uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially as I reached my teen years.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's heightened, right, through puberty and that sort of thing. And then, you become aware of other people's sexual energy, and, it can get creepy. And, uh, and so I shut it off. I don't know how I knew how to shut it off. Yeah, you know what I'm talking
I
about,
know
right?
exactly what you're talking about.
I mean, it was actually, I remember taking Midol, which is a cramp formula, right, to shut it off.
Wow.
I don't know. I just took anything because I didn't know as a teenager. What did I know? And
Right.
I couldn't talk about it to anybody. And
Right.
so I just, you know, hated sensing all this stuff, but I didn't know what to do. And so I ended
Mm-hmm.
up somehow, through sheer willpower, I guess, I shut it off. And because I didn't know if I was going nuts, if I was making it up or whatever, but it was darn uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when people talk about expressions like undressing you with their eyes, well, they're doing it energetically and you can feel it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're sensitive, you can certainly feel it. But you can't really name it because they'll say, I wasn't doing anything.
Right.
So it's a and tricky waters to navigate.
Yeah.
And so I shut it off, and then I became completely denying the energy world and all of that stuff, saying, nah, doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You can't measure it, or that. I was just, it was my period affecting my hormones or whatever, all of that silliness. So I became, instead I went scientific route and became an engineer, very practical, down to earth,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Incredibly
And
practical.
like my dad, and a part of that was also trying to, I think, prove that I was as good as any boy, because there was some in the 50s. There was definitely a preference for males
Oh
in the
yeah.
1950s, right? When I was
Mm-hmm.
born, I
Especially
was
with
born in 50.
engineers.
Yeah, well, even before that, I picked that up as a child. I had a brother, and he was definitely favored. My mom loved me too, but you could see that there was a big difference in the
Yeah.
degree of her affection.
Mm-hmm.
Her affection towards me was a little bit more forgetful. Let's put it that way.
Mm.
Unless I asked for it, kind of thing, whereas
Right.
he was able to get her instant attention. So you pick stuff that up as a child, and of course you name it as a child, and you're told, no, no, I love you both equally. And so what are you to make of that, right? And
Right.
so that was the early part of my history, which I then blocked out. Um, went completely the unsensitive. Anybody who knew me as an adult would have thought I was completely insensitive. So
Mm,
they would have thought that I was basically socially inadept. And I was. I really had no clue how to handle this, right?
right,
So
right.
I sometimes wonder if I was behaving a bit Asperger's or something like that, because they
Mhm.
often are clueless when it comes to social cues. And that
Right.
may be that they're doing the same thing for all we
Yeah.
know, right? Because it's an aspect of autism, and autism is a hypersensitive state. So it's quite
Hmm.
possible that people with Asperger's have made at some point in their life some decision to shut off their awareness, and then
Yeah.
they're left without any clues, you know.
Right. Right. No, I had a not career-wise, although I did work in an engineering firm, I was very sensitive. And then at 10, I got overwhelmed with sensitivities when my grandfather died and I shut down intentionally
Yeah,
because it was like I had, I'm feeling spirits, I'm astral traveling, I'm doing all the things. My grandfather sat on my bed for 3 days after he died to let me know he was okay. And I'm grateful for that. Nobody knew what to say to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
And I'm like, am I crazy? Because there's insanity in my family. Like, even though the insanity is actually like them dealing with their sensitivities and not having
Right.
this.
Yeah,
So I was just like, I gotta shut this down because I don't want to be institutionalized, even though there was nothing wrong with me. I just didn't have anyone to relate with.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is a problem.
Hmm.
So, but good for you for using your free will, and at that time it made sense to do it.
Right.
And, if I look back in my history as a child, I did what I had to do
Hmm.
to come through.
Yeah.
You protect your mind and you protect your consciousness, and all like that was overwhelming. So I had to narrow it down to what I could handle.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I
Mhm.
finally opened again. And I was basically forced to because I had I had become very, as a left brain logical, everything nice and orderly in my mind. I had I had a boyfriend. We were living together. We'd been together 4 years. We'd started looking to buy a house together. We were talking about building a family and all of that stuff. Engineers speak, building a family. But we'd been, looking at a house. And so in my neat ordered mind, I had this future ahead of me unfolding, all nicely plotted out, house in the suburbs, the 2.5 kids and the dog and the whole thing. And the man I loved. And that was that vision and nice ordered life was rudely awakened when I discovered that my partner who was living with me was cheating on me.
Mhm.
And so it's like when we broke up, it was like I'd lost the love of my life
Mhm.
and my future, all of it. It's as if there was an earthquake had opened up and my future fell in to the
Yeah.
abyss. And I just went into this spiral of such despair. And also, maybe I had some clues, but I was clueless. So the clues were that he started criticizing me a lot and nitpicking
Mhm.
in the days before I found out. So I guess maybe he was feeling guilty, and that was his way of compensating to make it my fault, sort of thing.
Right.
But I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I couldn't seem to do anything right.
Mm.
And it seemed like even how I breathed irritated him. So it was like, I'm not going to stop that. But so despite the clues, I didn't catch on. And so when I finally found out, I was devastated.
Yeah.
And it was only after the fact that I recalled the clues.
Mm.
And so I went into this. So it was my apartment. So I made him leave. And then I dealt with the aftermath, which was, I just went into deep emotional despair
Mhm.
and feeling of huge grief and loss at my whole future falling away. Also, that I could have been deceived by somebody I loved and trusted.
Yeah.
It was huge, right? The huge sense of betrayal, and can I trust anyone? And can I even trust my own awareness? Is it even accurate?
Mhm.
And so all of that happened. And then along with that, a lot of self-loathing thoughts, like you're a loser, you'll never find love, blah, 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 all partly from the record of criticism that I was getting. I internalized it and
Mhm.
ended up going, and with every negative thought, I spiraled deeper. And
Mhm.
eventually
Mhm.
it felt like eventually I fell into the abyss myself. And it's like when I eventually splatted on the bottom. So it's like
Mhm.
just sobbing my eyes out, and, pouring my heart out, and then feeling completely bereft and hopeless. And I remember saying, because this voice in it was the ego would say, you'll know, you don't deserve love, you're not lovable, blah blah blah, you're a loser, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And and it was like I'd lost my one chance at love, and that if I can't have love, why live?
Oh,
So that's how far that's what I mean by splatted on the bottom. It's
yeah.
like, it's now I'm done. And I was thinking, so in that sheer misery, as I was feeling that I was going to end my life and feeling that I could never have love, I suddenly had this experience. These words rang out in my head, but I love you, accompanied by this rush of goldenly pink energy pouring down through my crown. And I knew nothing about energy, but this is what I experienced all the way
Mhm.
through my whole body, right into every cell. Tingling love. It was the most beautiful, infinite love. I'd never experienced anything like that in my life, not even from my parents. It was just way bigger. And that it saw me. That was the part that blew my mind, was this vast intelligence or whatever it was actually knew me, and it knew every aspect of my being, and it knew every flaw and fault, and loved me anyway. In fact, my flaws, I discovered, were actually loved because they're just places of becoming. They're under construction. They're
Mhm. Mhm.
future qualities that aren't there yet, right?
Right.
And so it was like such a loving and embracing and forgiving and compassionate energy. And I went into this and I knew nothing about other altered states. I went
Right.
into this expanded state where it was like I was being carried into the cosmos, and basically seeing things from that perspective. And I realized, oh my God, this is the truth. This is the reality, and it's true for all of us. I'm not being singled out for special favors. I mean, it answered my agony. Obviously, it was in my faulty belief that I could never have love. It definitely proved me wrong.
Right. Right.
And and so I didn't know what to make of this. My neat little ordered engineer mind hadn't a clue what to do with this.
Right.
I had no frame of reference for it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It was a non-physical experience, but it was so real. I felt it right into every cell. And I didn't want it. If it just been words, I could have dismissed it, right? But because it was accompanied with such tangible energy, um, a tangible experience in the body, as well as in my heart and my field, but I didn't know anything about those at that time.
Right.
I had to know what this was. That's like, I need to investigate. I'm sure there's a scientific explanation, but
Mhm.
so that was what triggered suddenly going from skeptical left brain logical engineer, only the material reality exists, to suddenly, whoa, this is real, and it's nothing I ever heard of, and it's
Mhm.
vast. And so began my education in spirit. I found myself being nudged in certain directions. And first of all, because of my background as an engineer, I needed to understand intellectually, and I didn't know where to start. So, but I had heard of near-death experiences, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll read books on that, because this is
Yeah.
way before the internet, right?
Right.
So
Right.
books it was. That was all we
Yeah.
had. And so I started reading those, and that led me to stories of which it actually resonated quite well with my experience, and but it also led to other books on people who past life regression, people who had actually been regressed to infancy,
Mhm.
but were regressed too far, and so they actually remembered waiting to be born. So in
Wow.
these sort of Bardo states, and so now
Uh-huh.
I'm going, whoa, what's this? And then
Yeah.
that went to this sense of, oh, we are not limited to one life. We
Right.
actually are eternal, and we actually dip in and out of physical reality to learn things and
Hmm.
to develop ourselves. And
Yeah.
so little did I know later on, years later, I would actually become a past life therapist.
Mm.
And that through training for that, I'm not going to go through the, because it's a long story. I
Right,
tell you,
right, right.
so I'm not going to cover all that, but I could tell you I was led guidance, little synchronicity based synchronicity. And because of my open state, I said yes to the
Hmm.
opportunities that were coming to me. And, uh, and so when I was training to be a past life therapist, I met somebody who was a Barbara Brennan student, a
Mm.
student of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. And we were doing an intensive where all the students were practicing on each other past life regression. So you get pretty
Oh,
intimate
cool.
in that
Yeah.
work, right? And I had sort of befriended one of the guys studying there. We were hitting it off in flirting. We weren't doing
Mhm.
anything else, but there was a nice, comfy vibe and that sort of thing. Anyway, he ended up doing a session with me, and in that session, it turned out he was in that life too, and he
Oh,
didn't like what
wow.
happened in that life. And so after that session, it's like he shut off all contact, and and afterwards, I felt like I had this huge hole in my solar plexus.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was nothing physically wrong with me, but it felt like I had this gaping, like a cannonball had
Mm.
gone through, and that I was leaking energy there.
Wow.
And so I asked this girl who was a student at Barbara Brennan School and said, "Do you see anything? Because this is what I'm experiencing." She said, "Yeah, you do have a big hole in your solar plexus."
Wow.
And she said that, and this is all new to me, she said that people create cords in relationship. It's natural. It's all the subtle communication that goes on between people is happening through our energy cords.
Hmm.
And it starts with birth with our parents, right? So we're corded with everyone that we know well. And in short-term relationships, it's often just a streamer, like it's a temporary
Hmm.
connection. But when we start forming a relationship, we create these more solid energy tubes, if you like, between
Hmm.
our chakras. And what can happen is if a relationship ends abruptly, in anger or whatever, one of the parties can pull their cords out of you, and it can tear your field.
Mm.
So when they rip it out, it tears your chakra and your field, and energy is leaking out. So told me that, which was all new to me. I had no
Yeah.
idea, but I knew it hurt, and I was really shocked that something so subtle as energy could actually create physical pain.
Hmm.
And so she said, "Would you like me to fix that for you?" I said, "Yes, please." And so she waved her hands around and just doing all kinds of stuff with her fingers. And within a few seconds, the pain was gone. And she said, "All done." I was
I
like,
love that.
"What?
I
What?"
love that.
And she said, so then I was curious, tell me more
Yeah.
about this school that you studied
Yeah.
at, right? And so, I like that Barbara Brennan was a scientist, a NASA scientist. She was a physicist. And,
Cool.
but from childhood, she had the ability to see beyond the normal range of human
Hmm.
vision. So
Hmm.
she could actually see higher frequencies, and she could see the field.
Oh,
She
that's
could,
cool.
yeah, and she could see the auras around trees and plants and animals and people. But she had, because nobody confirmed it when she was little, she bypassed it and went into science and ended up being this physicist. And it was as a result of a traumatic relationship breakup that she had, an abusive marriage, that she ended up being in therapy to heal her wounds, her emotional
Yeah.
wounds, and that sort of thing. And while she was in group therapy, when she began to see the auras around the other participants
Cool.
in the session. So that, it started coming back. And
Hmm.
when that happened, um, she became curious, what's the scientific basis now
Oh,
that I'm a
yeah.
scientist, right? So
Yeah.
she wrote an amazing book of her what she discovered, and the more she used her ability, the better it got, the stronger it
Hmm.
got. And she eventually learned studied with a couple other people and learned how to heal. And because she could see energy so clearly, she could actually see exactly where a block was, and she could actually see her energy
Cool.
head going in there, removing it, repairing it. And she could even see diseases before they manifested,
Oh,
right? She could
wow.
see the pattern forming.
Hmm.
And so she wrote about all this, all her experiences. She wrote about all this in her book, Hands of Light, which she published in, I think, 1985.
Mm.
And it became a bestseller, an international bestseller. And it is now considered a classic in the classic textbook, basically, in the
Beautiful.
field of energy work.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was translated in multiple languages. And suddenly she was getting all these requests for healings from all over the world.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she couldn't handle it. So she thought, okay, I'm going to have to teach this. I need
Yeah.
to teach them to healers. So that was the beginning of her school, which started with
Cool.
like 20 people in her living room kind of thing.
I love it.
And when I went, so I went that next year, as soon as
Hmm.
I discovered about this, I went the next year. When I went, there were 800 students
Wow.
attending from all over the world.
That's beautiful.
So it was amazing. Yeah. So you can imagine what it was like to be in meditation with 800 students and this incredibly powerful healer.
Yeah.
And she trained a host of teachers. So I think she had like 80 teachers on staff. So she had made a big school out of this.
That's
And
awesome.
it was spread over 4 years. So it's not a weekend certificate
Okay.
thing. This is a major it's like going to university, a major
Okay.
4 year program, because she wanted to create healers of integrity.
Mm.
And that meant we had to look at our own stuff. We couldn't just wave our hands over people and that was it, you're done. We had to actually, we actually had to be able to provide safety for people if we were exploring trauma
Yeah.
in their field. You can re-traumatize them if you're not helping them through it, right?
Hmm.
And that's one of the dangers if something opens spontaneously in, say, a Reiki session, like somebody who's got Reiki 1, for example, has no training whatsoever on how to support somebody. All they
Hmm.
know is hand positions.
Right.
And so, and I studied Reiki as well. So in my journey, and so I'm talking from my own what I experienced.
Hmm.
Uh, and so we learned way more about that. We learned about how the psyche develops in childhood, and the stages we go through, how our field develops, how our chakras start out like little tiny teacups, and then they eventually grow into the big funnels that they are as adults. And
Hmm.
so, and we learned the skills to rebuild and restructure the field. And people have asked me, what's the difference between Reiki and Brennan healing science? And I use this analogy: if Reiki's like a head massage,
Okay.
and Brennan healing science is brain surgery.
Mm.
So it's far more intense and intricate
Okay.
and deliberate. So you're
Mm.
actually working specifically with what's broken in the field.
Mm.
And you're also working on the emotional level and spiritual level with and beliefs, the level of what's behind it. It's not
Hmm.
just about fixing a block. It's about what's that block represent. It's there for a reason.
Hmm.
And most people don't realize an energy block doesn't just happen to you.
Right.
You you put it there. We put it there because we needed to.
Yeah.
Like we did as children, right? We blocked our awareness because we couldn't cope with it.
Right.
It's not intended to be permanent, but it's meant to give us a breather until
Hmm.
we're ready to deal with it. And that's one of the beauties of working with adults later on. So I'm dealing with childhood trauma, some of it horrific,
Yeah.
but they never, it went underground because they never dealt with it. They
Right.
avoided going there. Just like in our conversation, if somebody wants to talk about something that you don't want to know about or talk about, you say, I'm not going there. Literally, our energy won't go there. Wherever we
Right.
hold those memories, we'll bypass it.
Right.
And so after decades, it can lead to physical illness,
Hmm.
because the cells aren't being nourished.
Right.
They're getting some nourishment, or it'd be dead, but the tissues aren't the cells aren't dividing
Right.
as often. The tissues weaken, they're not as strong, and they're more susceptible to
Hmm.
illness
Hmm.
or injury. And so when they come to see me with a physical problem, the location of the block to me is like a big red X saying, dig here for buried treasure. Because there's a
Very
part of
cool.
them, part of their own self that they locked off in there,
Hmm.
that they walled off. And that's the gift of
Yeah,
dealing with your blocks is, first of all, you get to heal the physical symptoms, and secondly, you get more of yourself back.
right.
Often a precious part of our childhood that
Hmm.
and in our case, sensitivity and other things. And so the beauty is that they come to me as an adult, they are now equipped to deal with it when they
Hmm.
couldn't as a child.
Right.
They've had life experience now. They know the things, the conclusions we draw as a child, right? We often will draw conclusions about the world and what's true, and also about ourselves and our worth and all that, which based on child logic. It's not based on any experience. It's often 4 or 5. What do we know?
Right.
But we draw these conclusions that maybe we're not worthy, or whatever, and then that's such a painful thought that we bury it, but it's affecting us as an
Oh yeah,
adult.
I recently came across a very fascinating jigsaw puzzle of uh many things happening between 10 and 11, and I'd never seen the mosaic before. And then I tuned into the choices I made, which made absolutely no sense to the adult me, but looking at me as a 10, 11-year-old made complete sense.
Yeah,
And it was like just
absolutely.
so fascinating because like the child logic isn't logic.
No, no, and it's nobody's helping it.
Right.
Nobody talks about energy or any of this stuff. Nobody's helping them through it. And so they're doing the
Hmm.
best they can, right? And mostly it's to shut off anything they can't handle,
Right.
and so now you come to a healer, in your 40s or whatever, and with some physical problem, and and now you're equipped now. You've got adult knowledge and understanding, and you realize when you finally touch in to that childhood memory, because as a healer you can charge the field and bring it into awareness, right?
Hmm.
Then and then they say, oh yeah, a memory's coming up when I was 5,
Cool.
and I thought I was responsible for my parents' divorce because I didn't clean my room.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
mother had yelled at the kid, let's say little Timmy. She'd yelled at him because he had, after umpteen requests, he hadn't cleaned his room, and then she was in a bad mood. And then her husband comes home from work and she yells at him. And next thing you know, they're in a giant fight. Of course, there were other things going on in their
Oh
relationship, but
yeah.
little Timmy didn't know that,
Right.
and he thinks it's his fault that she yelled at his dad. And then they divorce, and then he loses. He has to pick between one or both parents, and he, in his heart, where he held that awful sense of regret and remorse and all that, he was 5. What did he know?
Right. Right.
He carries it into adulthood. Now he's 50 and he's got heart problems,
Hmm.
and he's coming in to get some help with that. And then we explore that, and that memory comes up, and he
Yeah.
says, oh my God, it wasn't my fault. What was the, I didn't
Right.
know, but I was such an awful thought that I had to bury it.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it, right? So now the truth, just through his adult awareness, he sees the truth for himself. And he says, oh, and it's like this huge wave of compassion for his little self, right?
Yeah.
And I say, do you still want to keep that? Believe it? And he says, no,
Right.
I think we can let that one go. And so
Right.
then we can clear it out of the field, and it goes without any trouble. And then the body heals quite naturally because now it's getting fresh energy,
Right.
and the cells respond.
I love that. I love that because like I do body talk, so I help animals with body talk, and
Oh,
I love the shifts in like how it comes through because that's how they communicate with me through consciousness. And I just write down the formulas for them. Can't read my writing. Um, and then the animals heal, and it's like so beautiful to like have the awareness of the energies, and like the more I am sensitive with myself, the more sensitive I am with so many other things. And I have trees talk to me, I have boulders talk to me, and everybody has this ability.
Yeah.
It's not a conversation, it's just like awareness of the energy fields.
Yeah.
And so here's something that's coming in that I want to talk with you about. That's called energetic awareness. So I had someone in my life that was a very intense relationship for a year and a half. It was not it wasn't physically intimate, but it was a very emotionally intimate relationship. We eye gazed, we embraced each other regularly, and then there was a break off. And I processed, and then this person came back into my life every 4 months for like a year. I'm like, okay, but you just broke. So like, heal the wound, break it open, heal the wound, break it open, and heal the wound, break it open. The last time it happened, this person was talking about how cool it was to eye gaze, which is a very deep energetic bond. Like even to
Yeah.
me, even more intimate than sex. We had really deeply eye gazed multiple times, and I'd never done that with anyone before, so I didn't really understand the power of it. Well, he was stressed about seeing me. I had a physical response to the stress he had about me manifest in my body twice.
Mhm.
And I had this awareness like, oh my gosh, this is a bond that I thought we were complete with, but we're not complete with. So I had to do some intense energetic healing to completely cut that response off. And like, I'd never thought of that level of awareness and responsibility before, of like how, when we have those bonds, if the relationship's complete, what we need to do to clear it. And then as we show up in the world, like, how am I connecting with, like, I intentionally like go into my heart when I have interviews because I want to have a really heart to heart conversation. Can you talk about that a bit? Because I think it's a really fascinating area that nobody really knows about.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for people who are highly sensitive, it's really important to know when to disengage. So it's okay to merge temporarily, but you don't want to be walking around with them in your head, because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to tell what's yours and what's theirs when that's happening, right? And so, especially as a healer,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe you're okay working with animals, but with working with people,
It's a
there are
different
people.
thing.
There's some pretty wounded people that come in.
Yeah.
They're wonderful people, but they're wounded, and so
Right.
they're in progress. They're healing. They're
Mm-hmm.
working through stuff, and you have to go to some pretty scary places with them.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to carry that around with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's first, so as part of the sort of container that I create as a healer, when the session is over, I hand them back over to their own higher self and guidance, and place them
Mm-hmm.
in God's loving hands to take it for the
Yeah.
next step. And then I, with respect, disengage energetically from
Mm-hmm.
them. So I think of it as kind of like a energy streamer going to
Mm-hmm.
them wherever I've connected to them. If it's just a short-term thing, it's probably not a cord. It's more of a streamer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I just consciously disconnect from them, stop the energy flow to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like turning off a faucet, stop the
Mm-hmm.
energy
Mm-hmm.
flow. And then I drop the energy connection. So wherever it's connected to their field, I drop it as if you're dropping a tennis ball.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there's a little hand at the end of your streamer, so you're just dropping the connection, then you withdraw it back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like to take that energy that I brought back to me, and I send it up to spirit to bless, purify, and heal it before I return it back to me. So it's
Mm-hmm.
been cleansed on the way
Mm-hmm.
back. And similarly, when I return their energy back to them, I send it to spirit to cleanse, purify, and bless it, and send it back to them cleaned and improved. So it's
Mm-hmm.
nice and clean.
Mm-hmm.
I stop worrying about them. They're doing their thing. I'm doing mine, and we'll connect again next time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important skill to learn, especially as a sensitive. With
Yeah.
it, not just healer, not just clients, but anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I discovered once I started, actually, even before I went on the healing path, I remember in my in my 20s even, noticing an odd phenomenon. And what that was, when I would go to the movies, I would, at the end of the movie, I'd come out and go to the ladies' room and, wash my hands and that sort of thing. And as I was looking in the mirror, I'd be shocked to see my own face looking back at me, because I had merged with the big
Right.
screen characters,
Right.
right? And that's who I
Right.
expected to see looking back to me. And it was so weird. And
Wow.
that's when I discovered that I had this pattern of merging. And it
Mm.
later at the Barbara Brennan School, I learned that is an infantile pattern. It's a pattern from infancy,
Okay.
a very young age. It's during breastfeeding that the child is merging with the mother through the gaze.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the gaze.
Yeah.
So you're connecting to the person's essence through the eyes. And that's a natural thing that's supposed to happen in
Mm-hmm.
infantile development, is that the mother returns the gaze. And it's like an acknowledgement, soul to soul. I see you and I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an essential part of what we're supposed to receive as infants, not just milk, but
Mm-hmm.
that maternal gaze.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the mother's not there, if she's present but not there,
Mm-hmm.
you're gazing into her, but she's thinking of something else or whatever, you're still looking for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that doesn't get properly resolved, then it becomes a habit, unconscious habit of seeking for that recognition in
Mm-hmm.
others. And it's not conscious at all. It's
Right.
completely underground. And I realized, so that's what's responsible for that merging pattern. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's ancient. It goes way back to, that young.
Right.
And it goes immediately to the unconscious, because you're not really capable of rational thought at that age.
Right. Right.
And so, it comes in handy if you're a healer and you want to know what's going on in your client and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's a way of being able to understand what they're going through, but you can't carry that with you.
Right.
And I've tried to reduce that pattern, but I get that I'm not meant to. In fact, my soul chose that experience so that
Mm-hmm.
I would have that skill. So but it was a curse for a long, long time,
Yeah.
until I learned how to work with it and to learn how to unmerge. That was the key.
Yeah.
Learning how you don't have to stay merged, you can unmerge.
Mm-hmm.
And so perhaps in the case of this person, that's something that's worth practicing, is, and it's not about cutting cords. I know a lot of people teach about cutting cords in
Okay.
relationship. At the Barbara Brennan School, we don't learn that.
Okay.
We learn about healing cords. Cords are natural,
Mm-hmm.
but they get distorted, and a lot of distorted energy gloms onto them, right? Hidden agendas and
Mm-hmm.
power issues and that sort of thing, and they show up in the field.
Yep.
And so, for example, somebody might love you, but there's also a manipulative element to
Mm-hmm.
the relationship, and that shows up like a little vine curving around the love cord. The love
Mm-hmm.
cord's
Mm-hmm.
valid, but there's this little manipulation, this control current. They
Mm.
want you to be a certain way so they can love you, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel it, but we can't name it because nobody will
Right.
commit to it, right? So part of the work, if you're healing a relationship with somebody who does that, as a healer, is to unwind that. And often it's going into, through the chakra, into your own essence. So there's, in some way, they're trying to find themselves through you.
Mm-hmm.
And what they really need is to connect to their own essence.
Mm-hmm.
And so the work is unwinding it from your essence through your chakra, and it does some damage to the chakra as it goes through it, and then back to the original owner, and plug it into their core essence. And there's usually an explosion of light, and then suddenly, whoa, I didn't know I had that in me. And so
Mm-hmm.
it shifts the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then we repair the chakra on the other side, and then now we just clear the gunk and the distortion from the field, and now they can have a normal, healthy relationship through the
Mm.
cords. They don't have to cut them. We just need
Right.
to clear the gunk, and
Mm-hmm.
we're meant to be connected, especially
Right.
with those we have long, major relationships with.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, we want our cords to be healed. We can disconnect them, and we do that, but we don't cut them. We
Okay.
disconnect them. We just basically unhook them from your field, and then put it
Mm.
uh, either at the edge of their own field on the inside, or it's somewhere in midair between you. And same thing with yours. And then it's between, we take your cord out of them and we put it to the edge of your field.
Okay.
So you're not connected anymore, but you can choose at any time to reconnect.
Okay.
So it's not a violent thing like cutting and that's it, you're
Hmm.
gone. Uh, and I personally like that better.
Yeah, that actually feels nicer
Yeah,
because I don't
yeah.
wish ill on anyone.
No, no, and
Um,
nobody knows what they're doing, and most people are
right.
totally unaware of what they're doing energetically.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like I've noticed, like I actually prefer being alone most of the time. And it's because I pick up on energy so much. Like even a simple thing like going to the grocery store or getting gas or something like that, I can feel the energies. And
Yeah.
I was gifted an awareness of activating my Merkaba in crowds before and then sending out a Toronto field of unconditional love. So that's what I do pretty much
Yes.
every morning when I wake up and right before I go to bed. That's just a tool
Yes.
so I can still love myself while I'm still sending love outside of me, but I'm not getting sucked
Yeah.
into that dynamic. Do you have anything that you do that's similar to that?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. We call it the bubble,
Cool.
and it's basically, your field can, you have control over your field. You can
Hmm.
expand it greater or smaller as you like, and we do that unconsciously. If we're in a bus or something and it's really crowded, we contract our field to our skin maybe,
Hmm.
because it's just too intense to be overlapping fields with others.
Hmm.
But yeah, in my book, there's a section on how to create a safe bubble of safety around you, and
Cool.
basically you're connecting in with love. You're
Hmm.
actually, and the easiest way is to think of someone you love, or a pet, or a spiritual teacher, somebody you deeply appreciate and love, and feel your love for them,
Mm.
and that attunes you to the frequency of love.
Hmm.
And then expand that frequency into your whole field. So you just allow that warm, lovely feeling of really appreciating this person into your whole field, and you just allow it to fill you up like a balloon with,
Mm.
so you've got, your whole field is now filled with this beautiful loving energy. And what I like to do in the process is I like to nourish my cells with it as well. It's absolutely, actually it's your love that you feel
Mm.
for this person, so let it nourish you too.
Hmm.
And so you take it in every cell so that you can be felt nourished by it.
Yeah.
And then you fill your field with this love, and you create, kind of make the outside of the field kind of like Teflon, but you're still radiating the frequency of love.
Yeah.
So people are
Yeah.
still feeling it. And one of the things that we were taught is that our energy fields are like tuning forks, and that if you take two tuning forks that are machined to the note of C and you strike one, the other will start humming too.
Hmm.
And so our fields are like that. So if
Hmm.
you're able to radiate love in within your field, you don't have to send it to anybody, you just hold it. Their
Mm.
fields will start, it's a high frequency love, so
Hmm.
their fields will start increasing in frequency quite unconsciously, and they'll start feeling a little bit gentler and kinder. And it's a wonderful thing to do in an argument. You don't have to say a
Yeah.
word,
Yep.
right? They'll be
Yep.
blah, 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 blah. And you just hold that field with the
Mhm.
loving vibration, stay grounded and present with yourself, and fill your field with that. Doesn't hurt you, but slowly they run out of steam, and
Right.
then they start changing their mind, say, well, maybe I'm being a little extreme. Actually, you're not that bad.
Right. Right.
And then, actually, I like you really. I just had to get that off my chest. And so,
Yeah.
and you've done and said nothing. So
Right.
often we're caught up in arguments to defend ourselves, right? And you
Hmm.
don't have to. You don't have to.
Nope.
And so, like you do with your Merkaba, it's very similar. So you could take and what I recommend doing is practice it when you don't need it. So
Mm.
practice it in a safe place when
Hmm.
you're not surrounded by people, because trying to learn
Right.
it when you're in a crowd is
Right.
tricky.
Right. That's what I do when
Uh,
I wake up in the morning because I'm like in this nice peaceful state and I'm like,
yeah,
okay, this
perfect.
feels
Absolutely.
good. Yeah, because I
Yes.
have had the experience of getting overwhelmed with the crowd energy before. when I was younger, before I had, I mean, this is very recent. This is this last year where I was sitting in a crowd in a theater watching Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, and I had an experience. I was living in near Mount Shasta for 3 years, and I moved up to Orcas
Wow.
Island, and I didn't stop normal behavior for 3 years. Like I saw my friends,
Wow.
we had dinner together, we hugged each other. Like, so I had a very different experience than a lot of the world. So I come into Orcas Island, which was very traumatized. And I'm sitting in the theater and I'm feeling that because it's the first time they're all coming out of their shells and they're starting to test the waters of like what normal life was. And I am just filled with compassion.
Mm.
And I feel my heart just like looking at everybody. I'm like, oh my God, I want to hug everybody, but I know they're too scared. And so that's when I heard activate your Merkaba and send out a Toronto field of love. And then I was able to watch the play knowing that I was loving everyone and not taking in their energy.
Beautiful, beautiful. And
Yeah.
and they didn't feel that you were pushing on them either. So
Mm-mm.
because it was just radiating,
Yeah.
it's like the sun, you can take it in or not, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and most people like to take it in because
Right,
it
right.
feels good, right? And so is love feels good. And so you were doing a real service in
Yeah.
doing that.
It felt
And
really beautiful because like,
yeah,
because I wanted to love everyone, but I'm the newbie. And I had people like worried about shaking my hand. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just connect with the land and the ocean and the animals and the trees. And that's my contribution. And then if I'm in a public atmosphere, I just do that because I don't need to interact with anyone. I can just be that presence. And that felt like the best thing I could do.
yeah, yeah. And you're protected anyway from with your within your field too. And so yeah, we don't need to amplify fear. There's
Hmm.
plenty of people doing that already. We
Yeah.
can we can do the opposite,
Hmm.
and it really does transmute fear. Love is
Yeah.
so powerful, and it transmutes fear into understanding and forgiveness, and it's so beautiful. I love the my healing practice. It's such sacred work, right? I love
Yeah.
working with people on the level of the soul, and it's not just about healing illness and that sort of thing. It's about helping them find themselves
Mm.
and find the light within, and then what does their light want to do?
Hmm.
Where do they want to take this in their life? They don't have to stick with things they don't love,
Right.
and that the soul's longing for that. And so I love being a bit of a midwife in that area as well, right?
Yeah.
And I seem to attract more and more clients that are really less, although I have one client that had a serious accident but it's turned into an awakening journey. Which serious accidents can do,
Yeah.
right? When your
Yeah.
life is seriously impacted by a traumatic injury, um, it causes a lot of soul searching,
Hmm.
and you're in the perfect place to begin to grow and open up. So
Yeah.
it's I love it. I love being able to serve in that way. It's such sacred work, and it's such a pleasure and a joy to witness the light in them, and
Hmm.
they're beautiful souls, even if they don't see it yet. They start to after a
Yep.
while.
Yep.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. You're reminding me, I taught adult education back in the 90s, and I remember one semester there was this kid who was an amazing artist, but he drew nude portraits and just kind of, it was very sexualized. And so one day he's drawing, he's not paying attention, and all the students were like, I don't remember saying, but like, hey, she's coming, she's coming. And I'm like, oh, you think I'm that person? Okay. So I walked over during break and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I'm not really interested in the content, but you are really talented. And he'd always gotten in trouble for that. I felt and saw the switch. All of a sudden, he became my best student because I acknowledged him. And that light spark, that's why I love teaching, to see that spark, because it means that the soul is engaged again. And that is like, it's such a joy to feel and experience that awareness of like, oh, wait, I'm more than what I thought I was. And wait a minute, this life experience is way more interesting than it was because somebody saw me.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
then it's not like a cry out for help. It
mhm,
becomes, what else can I do with this? Right?
right.
What a gift you gave him.
Oh, it was magical. And I just
Yeah.
loved it. It's like, wow, I was able to gift him that. And, I've had that with other experiences too, but that one just jumped out. And it's just so beautiful when there's that awareness of like, oh, I'm not just a body. I'm actually a soul experiencing life through a body. And we have so many gifts that we don't even know we have yet.
Oh yeah.
And to
That's
uncover those is just, it's so magical.
it is, and it's so exciting because the whole world's open up ahead of us of possibility, and you know, the purely materialistic focus is kind of limited,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people, because they don't know what else to do, they get sucked into addiction and
Yeah.
shopaholism and all that because they keep being sold on the idea that happiness is there, and they keep being disappointed.
Right.
But eventually, I think the soul, it's just programmed to awaken. It's programmed to flower like any lovely flower, right? Plant. It starts
Mm-hmm.
out as a stick in the ground with roots, and then eventually it wants to flower. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we're like that too. And we're just biding our time until the conditions are right for us to actually, oh yeah. And so when somebody shines the light on you, their sun of recognition, right? That's like the plant
Yeah.
says, oh yeah, sun, boing,
Mm-hmm.
you know how fast plants bloom
Oh,
when it's
yeah.
warm and sunny, right? So
Uh-huh.
and I can just imagine for somebody who's a parent, they have the opportunity to do that for their
Mm-hmm.
children. I mean, to be that sunshine and to really enable them to thrive into their full expression. What a gift.
Oh, yeah.
And for the parents, I mean, what an initiation for them, right? Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to see that being that came through you that's completely separate from you, that you're a steward to and guidance, remember like that divine spark that's within us. That's just magical.
Yes, it is. So uh that's my favorite subject. I love it. And I love hearing your experiences, and I would love to know more eventually about your practice with animals. I love
Thank you.
animals, so I'm curious about that.
It's pretty magical.
Yeah.
I'll just say that it's pretty magical. I'm like a kid in a candy shop when I get to like when I get the responses about what's changed. I'm like, that came through. It's just joyful. It
Yeah,
really is. It's
yeah,
like my
yeah.
favorite. It's one of my favorite things to do on the planet is to help the animals. So yeah, it's really
Oh,
magical.
absolutely.
So I'm going to ask
Absolutely.
you one final question for now. How do people find you?
Oh, best way to find me is on my website, which is energyisreal.com, one word. And that's it. On the website, they can find, there's a contact us form that they can reach. They can also, there's my number as well if they want to book sessions. And Also, I provide links to websites on energy research and
Cool.
science. So I think that's cool for some people. And for those who are interested in getting on my newsletter, I offer a free sample of the book. So the first chapter
Nice.
of the book is all about the
Nice.
world of human energy, and it includes 6 exercises for people to
Oh,
develop.
that's lovely. I love
Yeah,
that.
to develop their energy awareness, to play with it.
Hmm.
And there's also 6 audio recordings available on the website to
Oh,
accompany
awesome.
those lessons. So
Awesome.
that's a little offer. And yeah, and I also do offer workshops and things like that. I also studied about the law of attraction and how that all ties in. And so that's my goal this coming year, is to get more into offering more workshops because I really enjoy teaching. And so
I understand that. It's really
yeah,
magical.
so the newsletter will give them, I can give them heads ups when something like that's coming down the pipe. And
Beautiful.
sort of thing. As I'd like to, it's not, it's right now it's very infrequent, the newsletter, so it's not like their mailbox is going to be flooded with emails from me. But I would like to start sending like energy tips every week or couple of weeks or so.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'm not
beautiful.
organized yet to do that. But that's the
It's
plan.
January. It's January. You're
That's
good.
this. Yeah, this is that's right. That's the plan for this year is to do that. But I hope they'll forgive me. But at least in the meantime, they can practice those exercises if they want
Hmm.
to.
Hmm. Well, Gail, it has truly been so delightful to have the connection with you, to learn from you, to expand my awareness in different ways. And you're such a delight. And I'm just so
Uh,
grateful to know you and that you're doing this magical work in the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
oh, and thank you for hosting and for this amazing podcast and for your warm welcome and your fascinating questions. It was a delight to connect with you as well. I love your energy too. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Take care.
You too.